Sound that. Good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Samach Daled. We get a little shorter block today. Get the rest. Pretty straightforward. What need the other Gemara?
It says fightful.
Oh, it's honestly, yeah.
What?
He's not here. He's not here today.
Oh,
Yeah, just careful with it. All right. So we look. Today is Daf Samach Daled Mesachas Baba Basra. So we actually get to a point that our visitor yesterday, I don't know his name, the guy who sits behind me. Slager.
from
Who is Slager?
It's Belgium.
Belgiumese.
Flemish.
He speaks Belgiumese. All right. So we got to the Mishnah yesterday. So now let's go. And away we go. I Mishnah. Lo Samach Daled Amanal. Middle of the page. Lo Sabor, Lo Sadus. So a guy, he sells a house, almost or a property, similar to what actually we've been discussing yesterday, almost a continuation. So he sells him a house. He has not included the pit or the cistern with it. Even if he writes with it, from the heights to the depths, or the depths to the heights, excuse me, right? And we said yesterday that a person does not write superfluous words. So if those words are written, so this is according to the sheet that says, then he would own underneath the house and above the house, but not necessarily underneath the house to include pits or stuff overhead. So that was just above and just below. That would be included in the words kavaruma, but nothing else. Certainly not for the losadus, which have actually separate usages. But and he has to go ahead and buy himself a path to the watering pits. So let's see what's going on. So I sell Eddie a property, all right? And even though it's written in it, from the depths of this and that, from the depths of the heights, Eddie does not acquire my watering my watering hole, right? Not referring to a tavern, right? It's just a literal watering hole. Now, so it's still my watering hole, but it's in Eddie's property. How do I get there? So says Rabbi Kiva, I got to pay Eddie now for a way to get to my pit. He can sell me rights, and he owns the paths there. The Chaim say he does not have to go. In other words, when I sell to him and I leave over my pit, right, my watering pit. Therefore, I leave basically like the quickest route, a path to the watering pit, according to the Chachamim. According to Rabbi Kiva, I did not leave over a path. Oh, good morning, Yigal. We are in the Samach Daled Amud Aleph. We just started the Mishnah.
Thank you.
So Chachamim. Unmuted now. And then Rabbi Kiva says, I even unmuted. I even sold the path. But Rabbi Kiva, and Rabbi Kiva would agree. Now let's flip it around. Now let's say Derech. But Rabbi Kiva would agree, right? Well, that when I say I am selling you the house without the watering, without the pit or the cistern, right, with water in it. Right? So I don't have to buy the derech. Why? Because once again, since I added these words, I'm selling you the house, but not the cistern and not the pit, which is unneeded because those are never included. So why did I say it? It must be I'm not selling you the path to it. In other words, Rabbi Kiva would agree that those extra words, meaning the seller he retains the path. Now we're going to flip-flop the case. Huh? Well, he retains the path, and he doesn't need to pay anything because, who? The other guy. So the other guy would have to go ahead and pay him for it. It's not free. And Rabbi Kiva says, excuse me, Machron, now let's do the opposite. Machron le'acher. Now let's say I go ahead and add Eddie, and Eddie says, I want to buy my watering pit. So I said, okay, I'll sell it to you. So Machron le'acher, Rabbi Kiva ain't tzarich likach lo'der. So Eddie just paid for the watering pit. He didn't pay for the path to it. Nevertheless, Eddie, according to Rabbi Kiva, he's allowed the path. If I sell you the pit, I did not sell you the path. You want to use your pit now you got to pay me for it.
Strings attached.
Strings attached. So let's see the Gemara. So Yosef, Ravina, Vekokashile. First of all, Ravina was sitting there. He wondered, Hainu bor, Hainu dus. What's this difference between the bor and cistern, and the pit and the dus? Samalei Rava to Sev the Ravina. So says says Rava that Rava Tusfa. That was his name to Ravina. Tashma, come listen. The time of the Brisa, Echad Abor Vechad Dus, Bekarka. Both of them are in the ground, and both of them have water. El Shabor Bechafira. The pit is just dug. Behadus Bebinyan, and the dus is like I guess more of a cemented in the ground, right? So that is more of a structure versus the pit, which is more of just digging a hole. And similarly, yes, Rabashi Kashile, Hainu Bor, Hainu Dus. What's the difference between a born and Dus? Some of the Markashisha, Rabashi. So Tashma, come listen once again. The title of the Brisa, Bor Bechadus, the Karka, both of them are actually watering holes, storage of water in the ground. El Shabor Bechafira, the pit is made from digging. Vadus Bebinyan, that is more of a structure. Fine. Side point. Now let's get to the understanding of our Mishnah that. So according to Rabbi Kiva, I go ahead and I sell Eddie this house, right? I maintain the pits and the cisterns. However, I don't have a way to it because I sold Eddie all of the land, 100% of the land. So therefore, I have to go back and purchase a path or the rights to go ahead and use the path. That's up to Gemara. So my lab, so you don't have to go ahead and buy it. So you retain the path. So my lab ultimately the Rebbe Akiva Saver to the page Saver Meicher Ein Yofa Meicher, right? We discussed yesterday when maybe Rebbe Akiva is when a person sells something, he's generous. So therefore, I'm generous. I'm selling Eddie the land, and I'm not retaining for myself even a path to my watering pit. So therefore, I'm selling him 100% of the land, but Ein Yofa very generously. Meicher. The Rabbanan, sorry, Meicher buying raw Meicher. No, the seller, he's a little stingy, right? You bought the house, but I've retained the pit, so I also retain a path to my pits. I sell you 98% of the property because I retain the path to my watering pits. The Kamar Nami Baalma, normally what we say, Rabbi Kiva Latami, Rabbi Kiva goes to Shitasa, the Amar Meicher buying Yafa Meicher. When a seller sells something, he sells it generously. So Mehacha. It's that our Mishnah is the source of any time throughout Shas where it says that Rabbi Kiva says a person sells the Ayin Yafa, and the Rabbanan say the Ayin Ra. So Gemara says Mimai. Who says this is the machlekes over here? Tilma, perhaps it's Rabbi Kiva. Savar Adam right says she Maisav Acher. Maybe Rabbi Kiva holds Eddie is the buyer, right? So he doesn't want to go ahead and give me money, right? He's not buying for me to go back and keep walking on his property, right? So he's not going to buy or right and leave over part of the area for the seller, me, to still walk freely on, right? Let me buy those rights. So according to Rabbi Akiva, maybe the reason over here is because Eddie is not a fool. He wouldn't sell it to me, right? He doesn't want me walking on it. So he doesn't want me walking on it. So therefore, it must be that I sold that to him. It's not a generous rule of being generous, that I'm a generous seller. It means that Eddie wouldn't buy it unless he completely acquired everything. And the Rabbanan the Sabri, they would hold the opposite. Ein Adam right says Sheita, myself, the other. I don't want to go ahead and take his money, then all of a sudden I have to give him back money to purchase rights to it. So therefore, I'm not doing that when I'm selling it to him. So therefore, I'm not going to sell that part of it. So therefore, when I sell him the house, I'm still able to go ahead and walk to my land without having to go ahead and pay for it. So maybe that's not focus. So the says, okay, fine, maybe that's not focus. So maybe let's learn from another source. Let's learn for the Seifa. Our Seifa says the opposite case. If I go ahead and I sell Eddie just the watering pits, so how's Eddie going to go ahead and get to the watering pits? He doesn't have to go ahead and purchase a path because when he bought the watering pits, he also got the path. I.e., I'm a generous seller, right? So he has to go ahead. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's the source. The Gemara says no. We go after the knowledge of the buyer, right? The mindset. So now the buyer, or someone's buying, Eddie is buying these watering pits. So Eddie will not buy watering pits if he doesn't, after the purchase, doesn't have access to it. So therefore, obviously Eddie is purchasing it with in mind to have access to it. And therefore, since that's the case, it must be his access to it. And therefore, Rabbi Kiva would say, once he buys the pit, he no longer has to buy a path. The Rabbanan hold that what busted died to the meichers, and we go after the mindset of the seller. I'm selling him that, but I'm not selling him anything else, and therefore I'm just selling the pits and not any paths to it. If he wants to go ahead and path to it, that's a separate fee, and therefore we go after the seller. So therefore, maybe we can't learn from our Mishnah. So the Gemara says, "Velamiha." Let's learn it in later Mishnah, and we'll see it next week on Daf Ayin Aleph, I believe. So I guess a week from today, right? So he says, "Velamiha," or maybe a week from tomorrow, right? 6 days is Sunday. All right. So Velamiha, no, it would be today, right? Velamiha, loasa bar, loasa gas, loasa shayvecha. I go ahead and I sell Mark a field. So I did not sell him. Let's say on the field is a pit or a cistern or a dovecote, bein charvan, bein yeshuvin, whether they're in use or not, whether they're being used or not. I have not included those in the sale of the field. And if I want to go ahead, and since I didn't include it, and I want to go ahead and access my shayvech, my dovecote, but says Rabbi Kiva, I got to go ahead and pay Mark my right for me to go ahead and do it, to go there. Obviously, I sold Mark everything in my sada. It must be I'm a generous seller, right? And that's Rabbi Kiva. And it's if I would say I do not know need to go ahead and buy the rights to use the path to my dovecote because I didn't sell that part. I'm not such a generous seller. So why do we need another Mishnah to teach you basically, in essence, the same halacha as our Mishnah? Elalav, rather now must be Hakamash Wonder. Keep a saver meicher buying yafa meicher, but abundant saver meicher buying raw meicher. Maybe he comes to teach us the rule that when Rabbi Kiva sells, he's always, he sells it. He's a generous seller, and according to Rabbi Kiva, according to Rabbanan, when a person sells, he's not a generous seller. He's a stingy seller. So Gemara says no. Maybe there is something else we can learn from there. You can't just learn the general rule. The Dilma Ashmin and Bayis. Maybe our case is talking about a house. The Kamash Malone over there is talking about a sod, that's talking about a field. Maybe there's a difference, a havamino, whether the person is selling a field with retains a cistern versus selling a house and retains a cistern. Maybe like this. But Sricha, Diashmina and Bayis, if it's just I'm selling Eddie the house and not the pits, Mishum debates Niusa, right? Because over there, right, there's Eddie wants his privacy in his house, so therefore, me to just go into his backyard or whatever it is. So therefore, I'm intruding on him. So therefore, maybe in that case, I have to go ahead and buy it. But maybe in a field, who says there's no privacy issue. I can go anytime I want, and therefore, maybe Rabbi Kiva would say that I don't have to go ahead and purchase it. So Kamashma that he does. And if we just have the case of the field, Mishum, the Kasha, the Dafsh, the reason why maybe he has to go ahead and purchase the field according to Rabbi Kiva is because when I tread through it, causes damage on the field, right? Of Albayis, but when you're going to the house, there's no damage there on the crops, Maloa. So Ella, so therefore we see from that case, so that ratio of that Mishnah is not superfluous, it's not extra. So Ella, be safer. Rather, the safe over there, it says, Machron le'achir, if I go ahead and I have a field with a pit and a dovecote and a cistern, and I sell to somebody else, Rabbi Kiva Imer, and it's derech. I do not have to go ahead, the buyer does not have to go ahead and I'm selling the dovecote, he does not have to go ahead and buy a path to the dovecote, because that's included, right? Because I'm generous. The Chachamim says, no, you do have to go ahead and buy, because the seller is not generous. I hasul amali. Why do you need this case? We already did a bias and sada, and we ready for our Mishnah, that Mishnah. So Hainu Hach, that's the same other case. Elav, rather not, there must be Hakamash Malon. Finally, the Gemara says, yes, we can conclude from the safe of that Mishnah, and that is the source. There, Akiva Saver Meicher Bayin Yafa Meicher. When a person sells it, he sells it generously and includes, everything. Right, unless it's noted not to be included. Rabbanan Sabri and the Rabbanan hold that no, Meicher, the seller ba'ayin ra meicher, that he sells it stingily, and therefore shmamina, and then he does not sell, everything unless he is forced to by the contract. All right, we'll stop here. Shkoyach, everybody. Everybody have a wonderful day, and B'ez Hashem, we will continue this tomorrow.